Earlier this year, I began the 88th Armory with the idea of adding some variety to my, and maybe some viewers' arsenals by looking at weapon and Warframe builds that can work for the mid-game, where we play a lot of Warframe's experience and see what might make it into or close to the endgame. What I found in doing this was that I want to put everything on the table. Warframe is a game most often played in the mid-tier of its difficulty. This means facing enemies that are somewhere from 25 to 45 in level, give or take 5 levels. But what I found in attempting to point out in some of these weapons and builds that I enjoy in my mid-game play was that there are tons more to be had than even I thought. What we're looking for here is more variety, more fun in our Warframe experience. I still want to focus on more weapons, builds, and combinations for the mid-tier of the game where we often have a lot of our play, but I want to put all options on the table to find these elements of enjoyment through diversity, which is a lot of what Warframe has to offer. I'm Scott from Ramble Entertainment, and this is the new version of Season 1 of the 88th Armory. Let's find our fun, let's find our variety. Now, what I'm interested in looking at today is the kind of Vauban Zenistar build that has started to crop up as more players start to get the Zenistar. Sometimes I'm going to have things that I find to be mostly original as builds, things that I come up with. It's not that others haven't come up with them before me, it's just that I haven't seen anyone doing some of the things I come up with before I come up with them. But the Zenistar Vortex build is one that I think is becoming pretty popular. And really what I want to do with it today is analyze how the Ogris can add to this build, and just bringing the Ogris back in general. I feel like the Ogris is a weapon, much like the other explosive weapons, that is easily written off, but I do, in at least this season of Stay of the Frame, want to look at how it can be brought back, and even look at, outside of ribbon mods, how it can be brought back. For those who don't know, I play primarily on PS4, so right now we don't have ribbon mods yet. However, the thought of an Ogris ribbon mod does get me pretty excited, especially with a build like this, where you can control enemies away from you. You can keep them at the minimum of a 5-meter distance away from you, so that you can make sure that most of the time you're keeping that Ogris damage far enough away so that it's not killing you. So here, I just really think that what we want to look at is how the Ogris adds to this build, and the one mod in particular we want to look at is Nightwatch Napalm. Always be careful though, because you can still kill yourself when utilizing the Ogris in this build if you accidentally catch a corner when aiming, as I just did there. Nightwatch Napalm is a mod that came from Kayla Dethane, and you get it by going through Rethum, killing her, and then getting the mod and equipping it to the Ogris. So let's take a look at the builds. So much like my thinking evolved with my first new 88th video, the last video with Saren's Telos Contagion Cloud, my thinking also evolved here with this Perpetual Vortex on Vauban's build, where initially I thought I wanted to focus on duration and maximize the duration for the vortexes and add more vortexes with Perpetual Vortex into the vortex to just maximize what we're doing. But what it turned out was, after testing the build, say against the Infested in the last footage and in testing before that, I found that what I really wanted to focus more on was efficiency, and then stack the vortexes at a cheaper cost. Basically, with Streamline, your cost is 70 per vortex, but with roughly 170 power efficiency using a rank 3 fleeting expertise, each vortex costs 30, and you can stack them a lot more easily that way, where you don't have to, where you stack 3, and that is, let's see, 140 plus 70, that's 210 energy, whereas if you stack 3 at 30 cost, that's 90 energy. So, you know, it's kind of an obvious mathematical choice, but anyway. So, basically what we have here is a Vortex build that maximizes the range to get it roughly near 10 meters, and then no power strength, because really the power strength comes from your weapons, your Zenistar, which most people use, but really I like to focus mostly on the Ogris here in this video, so let's take a look at that next. Another item that I want to touch on as we start to look at our Ogris build here is this idea of hallway hero Vauban. Controlling a small compact space with plenty of obstructions within large areas. So like here, this is considerably a large tile, but it's easily controlled because of these large pillars around the mobile defense, this kind of hill that enemies have to come over to fight you, or these hills that they have to come up to shoot at you, and I think that really helps Vauban to become this powerful hallway hero using the Zenistar, Vortex, and Ogris in conjunction with each other. Now, it's also, I think, worth noting that the Vortex allows Vauban to access the Ogris, unlike other Warframes, where he can basically funnel enemies into this controlled space and keep himself away from those enemies so that nothing gets in the line of sight of his shots. Thereby, the Ogris, I think, actually becomes a viable option for him again. I also think it's important noting here, and I'm going to restart this build video, I think it's also worth noting here that you probably also want to always have an efficient secondary and a secondary that you can use up close against other enemies. Even in a space like this, now coming back to the idea of Vauban, his ability to access the Ogris, unlike a lot of other Warframes, and we'll look at other Warframes in this season that also can access the Ogris quite easily. In a space like this, you put out 2 Vortexes instead of 1, and while that's not as efficient, you still have this opportunity to access this awesome efficiency with this ability, and put yourself kind of in this corner where enemies don't really show up, to funnel them into these 2 points with this large area of effect of damage. Now, what I want to look at in this build, restarting it for the 3rd time, is really Nightwatch, Napalm, and Firestorm. Now, I think it's worth noting that on an Ogris build, you can achieve status. So if you want to add additional corrosive, viral, magnetic procs, you could. However, when using Nightwatch, I think you want to capitalize on increasing its size with Firestorm. And then, since there isn't that much room to add more status procs from there, what you want to do, I think, is focus mainly on damage. So this is a damaging Ogris build, and there's the Nightwatch Napalm, which gives you that area of effect, much like a Napalm enemy has, and, of course, Firestorm to increase the size of the area of effect by 24%. Again, this is kind of just adding more scaling to the damage that you're putting in the area of the Vortex. And I think that it is a cool addition to a build that people have already discovered between Vauban and the Zenistar. So then the final piece to this 3-part kind of puzzle that we want to look at is our Zenistar build. And with that, what we have is a damage focus build with some adding to some status procs. Now on the wiki, it's not very clear what how much status we really do with the disc, but I do see status procs happening with the disc in my gameplay. And so I think that it's good to focus on your corrosive, your viral, your magnetic, if you want to go with magnetic, because this will add to your TTK. Is it important? No, because what we're focused on is really going for those mid-tier builds. Again, this is a mobile defense that is 35 to 40 level enemies, but when we looking at our Grenier build here, say we want to take this build higher, which you definitely can take it to fight enemies over level 50. I would say that I would focus more on the viral than radiation here, so I would swap out Volcanic Edge for another, cold or toxic mod to add to viral, so that viral proc helps with TTK, time to kill. And I really think that is one of the better things to highlight about this weapon. This is also a disc-focused build, so it's not really meant, for getting up close and personal, and that's obvious because we're using the Ogris and it just killed us. And again, you want to watch out for, those close proximities, but even in a large area like this, you can still find a corner where enemies aren't going to get at you as easily, and I think that's important. So let's go ahead and take a look at our final video segment for this Vauban Zenistar Ogris hallway hero style. So the final place I want to look at this build in is survival. This is where I really thought I would like this build the most, and it's not that I don't like it here, it's just that I think one of the issues that I ran into when using this style, this Vortex Zenistar Ogris style play, was that the enemies don't get to your area of effect fast enough. So I think that this style of play in a survival will be useful with multiple friends, or just in a public match that, other players are off killing other enemies and you have enemies funneling into you, and those players can come hang out in your hallway if they need a moment. But really, I think that this is still a fine build, and even here on this map, you can find all kinds of different locations that the enemies will funnel into to utilize this style of play. So let's go ahead and take a look at what this style of play looks like, and then we'll come back with some final thoughts for it.
Get ready for a capsule. Chano, extraction is ready. That should keep you going for a while. Another life support capsule is now available. Life support activated. Prepare for life support.
Even in an open space like this, we can see how the Vortex can really cause a choke, and we can utilize portions of the environment for cover for Vauban, who isn't a very tanky frame, who isn't incredibly survivable, but we're using the Vortex to prevent enemies from closing the gap between us, so that we can still use the incredibly high damaging Ogris to hit them from a distance or put more damage in our Vortex. And I think both of these are great for this style of play, and shooting for, again, this hallway hero style of Vauban, where even, again, in this big space, we kind of create a hallway that enemies come to us within. And this would also be great even with players, other players, because then they could know that this is a great space to either come and add more damage within this area, or they can come chill in this area, do more damage to the enemies, and know that there is support within this area too. And I think that, so obviously some of the drawbacks to this build are point blank range. Obviously, Vauban, or most any frame, won't survive a point blank shot from the Ogris, so you'll die. But one of the other big drawbacks is just maintaining that Vortex, especially if you want to go two Vortexes. Say you want to take this build to Helene or Hydron, so that's Hydron on Sedna or Helene on Saturn, both of which being defenses. I would say a two Vortex style there is pretty useful with the Zenistar in the middle of those two vortices, if you will. And basically it's pretty energy intensive no matter what way you cut it, whether you're going with the extra energy efficiency or not. But still, it's a very fun build to take out and definitely scales well, especially dependent on the different weapons you bring and the level of your mods. And outside of that, I think that I'm actually more partial to this on, say, a defense or mobile defense, or even possibly an excavation. So it's not that it can't go to survival, but I think I'm partial. I love seeing enemies being blasted. I'm so happy to be looking at explosive weapons again. Ramble entertainment. I'm still gonna ramble. Anyways, I think that I'm happy with this on survival, but I definitely felt the strain on the life support. It just wasn't there as easily. Possibly if you and a Nova, so if there were only two of you, and you brought Vauban and Nova together, and she was a speed Nova, that might make this build more efficient, more of a combined frame style build more efficient. But outside of that, I'm happy that I'm looking at explosive weapons. I'm eager for what the Riven mods could bring to the Ogris. I think that any kind of status multi-shot, probably not crit, status multi-shot, I don't know if Rivens have area of effect like Firestorm. They probably don't. So any kind of damage, and I would also add firing speed. The reload speed on the Ogris really isn't that bad, so if you could up that firing speed to up that charge time, I think that's where you'll really get some Riven mods that can really benefit the Ogris, and I'm eager to get Riven mods for myself on my PS4 account, and really start to look at what these Riven mods can do for a lot of these weapons that I already enjoy in my mid-game. So yeah, we'll be definitely looking at the Ogris again when those mods hit my account on PS4, and I've got a lot more weapons coming up that we're definitely at the very least going to be able to theorize over, like another video coming this week for the 88th. So thank you for watching. I hope this maybe makes you reconsider the Ogris or helps you with your Vortex Zenistar builds. And again, gonna be having another 88th this week and gonna have a State of the Frame this week. So thanks for watching. If you enjoyed what we had to do here, do the thing and stay tuned.